And away we go. Alright, so, yeah, boy. There's this one story that, at first, actually, no, about time, I'd say. Took them long enough to actually get something through the door. So, yeah, we're gonna see what that story is. TikTok has signed Trump's deal to keep the app active in the United States. TikTok has reached an agreement to sell its US operations to a group of American investors, including Oracle, Silver Lake, and MGX, allowing the platform to continue operating in the United States. According to an internal memo obtained by the Associated Press and Reuters, the deal is expected to close on January 2nd. TikTok CEO Shou Zichu confirmed that ByteDance and TikTok have entered binding agreements with the three investors. Under the new structure, a TikTok US joint venture will be formed with 50% ownership held by a consortium of new investors. Oracle, Silver Lake, and Abu Dhabi-based MGX will each control 50%. Affiliates of current ByteDance investors will hold 30.1%, while ByteDance will retain a 19.9% stake. So, a particular lad from Scotland, Risk 11, he had his thoughts on the situation, and this is what he said. What they don't, what they won't say is CCP, Chinese Communist Party, still owns 30% of it. The data stays in China, and Chinese Communist Party still owns the algorithm. Touche. Very touche. And something else I've noticed, that even if, which is partially true at least, given that a lot of companies in China is state-owned, there's a handful of ByteDance investors are of course American, but that's at least sources from a while ago. Not sure if there's any American investors still on the investment of ByteDance to this day. Something's been signed, it's set in stone, and now we just wait till January 2026 before the deal goes into full motion. TikTok will continue to operate in the United States, but it comes at the cost of having American investors and companies being at the forefront on what goes on within TikTok in the United States. So yeah, there you go. But now, this begs the question, could other countries, could other countries' investors and companies also take ownership of their national operations of TikTok? Or is it just an American thing? Because they have so much money and they have a big economy. They're funding pretty much everything around the world, even universal healthcare, other countries' military, and whatnot. Well, people don't like to admit or say that America has grips on everything. You cannot deny that the size of the US economy is very loud, very noticeable, and quite dependent, I'd say, which is my concern, but here and there, so on and so forth. So yeah, whilst people will think that everything will just go on as normal, you never know what these investors in the US wants to see and wants to do with TikTok that is available to American users. There is so much that they want to do that they'll go at arm's length or try and experiment with whatever they can possibly do. So it's not all over yet for this TikTok deal. We need to wait and see what's going to happen. What do these investors want with TikTok that is available to American users? There is a lot at play. Democrats threaten legal action as the US Department of Justice expects a release to release several hundred thousand pages related to the Epstein investigation. Initially, with more to follow in the coming weeks. Lawmakers say they have been sitting through Epstein's estate, some featuring high-profile figures, but maintain appearing in the photos does not indicate wrongdoing. Congressperson Robert Garcia said most of the documents arrived without context, and they have been working to redact potential victims as the Department of Justice is legally obligated to make all Epstein files public by midnight Friday under the Epstein Files Transparency Act. Well, I have a reason. I have something to say. I know why these people in Congress don't want to release all of the Epstein files, even if a lot of the public wants them made public. They are guilty by association. Well, it doesn't even matter if they were even there and didn't commit whatever goes on. They are still guilty by the fact they were even on the island to begin with, and at least they were even aware about what even goes on that island, and just allow the operations to continue. And they will say, well, we can't have said something because they're going to sue us and my life will be ruined. Well, it's better to die a hero than to live long to be a villain. That's my say, and Risk 11 will say the same thing. He would rather die a hero than to live long enough to be a villain. And even if the public hates that person because of allegations, which not saying is true or false, but nonetheless, even if whoever this person is that had the courage to expose these parties by Epstein and other files regarding Epstein and all of his affiliates, and then all of a sudden the majority of the public turns against that person, ever since exposing secrets of the Epstein files and the parties affiliated with them, there will be a handful of people, not a lot, but there will be a few that will know what actually goes on. And they will know that when people are looking at why is this person getting so much hate after a particular incident, which a lot of people may not be aware of, someone is going to say, well, this person has exposed secrets of that person and all their affiliates. And ever since then, someone has been saying that he has done naughty things or she has done naughty things. And then all of it and everyone else has hated them ever since. So that's that. And this could go for anything. If there's something that everyone should know about, which really would put them behind bars for a very long time, but all of a sudden, the person that's guilty of such actions have a very good lawsuit team, or very good lawyers, yeah, you're done. There's going to be a smearing campaign against that person. But again, better to die a hero than to live long to be a villain. Not that anyone should ever die. They certainly shouldn't. But what's important is doing the honorable thing. And then, for some reason, I having this on my mind right now, there's going to be a handful of people that will call me naive for having hope whilst all of the world's all gone to crap. And you know what? They're right. The world has gone to crap. Well, that's because we make life complicated. And also, for anyone that said, I wish we'd go back in time because life was much simpler. Life was never simple. It's always been complicated. It's just our way of thinking that was simple. As we get older, our way of thinking gradually gets more complicated. And we start to see the unfiltered mask. That is reality that we live in today. I'm going off on a tangent. I'm going somewhere else with this. But it's still true though. Enjoy what you have left. Because it won't last for long. But at least you have closure. Having good moments you can look back on to compensate for the horrible stuff in the future that will likely happen to you. Again, no one should go through horrible stuff, but there are things in our lives that is beyond our control. And we can't be too sure that even if there are people that we believe are the good guys. What if there's a twist? What if we believe the good guys were good, but turns out they were bad all along? We won't know that until someone has given proof that these people have done very bad things. So yeah, that's quite the tongue twister brain teaser. Rome to change Rome to charge visitors for access to Trevi Fountain. On Friday, Rome Mayor Roberto Gualtieri announced a €2 ticket for non-residents to step onto the Trevi Fountain starting February 1st, while views from the piazza remain free. Officials point to heavy football, soccer football specifically, noting a 9 million visitors this year, averaging 30,000 a day and some days up to 70,000 after a year-long experiment with staggered entry and a 400-person cap at a time. City Hall estimates the scheme will raise €6.5 million a year, and 5 other sites will charge €5 while registered Rome residents retain free access. Gualtieri argued €2 isn't very much, and will lead to less chaotic tourist flows, with the fee applying 9 a.m. till 9 p.m. and free after nightfall, with Ivan Sulustri said, if it means that money is used to keep it maintained, then yeah, that's fine. This change follows similar moves such as the Pantheon fee in 2023 and Venice's charge last year, while the coin toss tradition still raises thousands weekly for the Caritas charity. I don't blame them. It's important that local communities and cities trying to make some money somehow to fund essential services for their residents, even if it goes into tourism, which millions of tourists a year flock to for that particular reason. However, over-tourism is a problem, as it is with not enough tourists visiting your local community. And with over-tourism, it turns some tourists off from even going to that place in the first place, because there's too many people all at once. There's concerns about getting cramped like sardines, people not respecting local environments, leaving litter everywhere. Whilst people don't want to pay money, I understand there are people that don't want to pay money to see a lot of things that would otherwise likely be free anywhere else. However, if it does mean it reduces the amount of tourists going to particular sites, especially throughout the peak of the day and going into the evening, fair enough. It makes sense to have some small fee that people would have to pay if they want to see sites during peak times. And the money that's used and whatever money that's generated from the tourists that pays the fees to see the particular sites in the city are then to be used to go towards maintaining the site, possibly go to charity if there's any left over, or maybe just gets reinvested back into the tourism department of the city. Now that's genius. It's an extra expense throughout your travels around the world, but for locals, it's there's a handful of benefits that comes from having small fees to be charged by non-residents, and then money that's generated from that goes towards maintaining the tourist attractions that people come from all over the world to see. That's about it. White House unveils Patriot Games youth contest for 2026, drawing Hunger Games comparisons. On December 18th, 2025, President Donald Trump announced the White House will host the first ever Patriot Games, a 4-day athletic competition next fall for America's 250th anniversary unveiled by Freedom 250. Freedom 250 launched Thursday with a promotional video outlining signature moments and will oversee the festivities, with Keith Crash serving as CEO to execute President Donald Trump's vision. The schedule includes a UFC fight at the White House on Flag Day and the nightly Washington Monument lighting through January 5th, 2026. Democrats and critics compared the Patriot Games to the Hunger Games, while supporters of President Donald Trump defended it, pushing back after his gender comment ignited controversy. The games are scheduled for next fall as part of the 2026 semi-quincentennial, with Rosie Rios, chair of America 250, welcoming initiatives that engage Americans broadly. It's quite a coincidence that nightly Washington Monuments lighting is happening throughout up until my birthday. Well, that's just a coincidence. There's nothing that's intentional with that. And anyway, regards to the Patriot Games, I find it quite funny. Now, of course, there'll be people that take this quite seriously, and they will. However, it just makes sense. Because if that's what America's all about, then so be it. Who's stopping them from putting up their own games, where representatives of each US state is to be represented for each of the events, and then medals to be given out to these athletes to see which state is the best state of all, if there are people like that. Not just patriotic to their country, but to their state as well. That'd be a whole nother level of patriotism. UFC fighting. Now that will be big. Anyone that's a fan of UFC, they'll pay good money to see that if they are charging tickets. Surely there'll be someone that'll pay good money for that. Special weather statement calls for 10 to 20 millimeter of rain, strong winds, and rapidly falling temperatures in Ottawa. On Thursday, Environment and Climate Change Canada issued a special weather statement for southwestern and midwestern Ontario, forecasting 10 to 20 millimeters of rain Thursday night before changing to flurries on Friday. A strong cold front will pass through the area, driving rapid cooling as westerly and northwesterly winds gust 60 to 80 kilometers an hour, Environment Canada said. West Region Ontario Provincial Office urged drivers to take extra care overnight and into Friday, as wet surfaces may freeze, making travel by foot, bicycle, or vehicle difficult. By Friday evening, conditions should calm even as weekend snow stays likely, with snow squalls off Lake Huron and Georgian Bay in the Saturday and Sunday forecasts. The Grand River Conservation Authority warned river flows in local waterways will be higher than normal, urging residents to stay off unstable ice and use caution near water. I've always wondered, how is it that temperatures across the US and Canada are a lot more extreme, whilst temperatures and weather in Europe is a lot milder? Well, I've watched a couple of YouTube videos on that subject for many years. To put it shortly, the cold winds from the Arctic blowing southbound to Canada and the US, where those two countries have more precipitation, at least with snow throughout the winter months, a lot more than rest of Europe. And then the warm air pressure coming from the Caribbean blows all across the Atlantic, pushing eastwards towards mainland Europe, which then gives European countries warmer temperatures, especially during the winter. than the US and Canada, and especially where I'm from. Whilst it hasn't snowed in months, I think there have been times that where I live, it could have snowed if the temperatures were a lot colder. Uh, it's showing me 6 degrees Celsius, but previous forecasts in previous days towards the future showed that temperatures could have gone lower, below freezing point, 0 degrees Celsius. But then in those exact days approaching, the forecast changes to say that the lowest temperatures can go is about 2 or 3 degrees Celsius. Sometimes maybe 4, 5, or even 6. Which is not bad, it's just uh I miss the days with those snow everywhere. And that's crazy to say if especially since around January last year, 2025, it has snowed, but there wasn't much snow where I live. Which is strange because if I were to take public transit outside of my town, drive like 3, 4 miles right away, I could see those neighborhoods 3 or 4 miles away from my neighborhood. There's a considerable amount of snow around January 2025, and I'm just wondering, how does my neighborhood not get that much snow? It doesn't make any sense. Why is it only in my neighborhood there isn't as much snow as the rest of the northwest region of England? Like, even Liverpool, of all places, had some amount of snowfall last time it was heavily snowing, or there was even an amount of snow. Huh, it's very strange. You know what? Maybe I'll never know why that's the case, but there may be some explanation. It's just I just can't prove it yet. Yes, I can't prove it yet. It's very complicated. Singapore to punish scammers with up to 24 strokes of the cane from December 30th. Why am I finding this funny? It's not funny. I don't know why I find it funny, but it's not funny. It's just the headline. Anyway, let's see what this says. Singapore has passed new laws allowing caning of up to 24 strokes for scammers, recruiters, and members of scam syndicates from December 30th. Those who knowingly provide personal details to facilitate money laundering from scams could face up to 12 strokes of caning. The new penalties are aimed at increasing deterrence against scam-related crimes, which the government considers a top national priority. A bit of a hot take. Actually, no, this is a hot take. Straight up. Now, no, I'm not saying that we should severely physically beat people up for their actions, even if they deserve it. Nonetheless, if there are people in this world that have done the most heinous and horrible of crimes, I don't see why not. One thing I will certainly draw the line on is the death penalty. That is it. Yes, these people have done horrible things, but the death penalty, that's just me. I, I steer away from the death penalty. Either that, between that or caning, I'd go for caning. Yes, they'll they'll be they'll be suffering some considerable amount of pain, but at least they can live a few more years just learning from that experience in hopes they will learn from their actions and not do the scams again. But that's just me being optimistic. I think these people would continue scamming again, even after considerable amounts of caning. I don't know how, and I don't know why, but for some reason there are people like that. No matter how severely you've punished them, they're just going to continue committing crimes again. Especially the same crimes that got them that particular punishment to begin with. So yeah, scams, they're very bad. It does imprehensible damage to not just people's finances, but also people's mental health. Because you never know how severe these scams could be to people. It could be a minor inconvenience, or at worst, could affect their lives or livelihoods. It could, it can, it, there are not all scams, but there are a few that can change people's lives so much to the point it just changes you. But of course, back to Singapore, punishing scammers with caning. Well, between that or the death penalty, I'd say punishment by caning. There'll be some people that think I'm going over the line that say that's a controversial take. Fair enough. Fair enough. However, if there are people in this world that have committed the most incomprehensible offences, whether it changes people's lives, causes some kind of physical harm or emotional damage, those people need to be punished somehow. Especially give these people punishment that reflects the impact of their actions on other people. And then for the actions that these criminals have applied to everyday people to then boomerang back to them, they now understand what they're doing is wrong. And it's not good to be a victim of a crime. And that is that. So now they know. Internet fueled extremism behind rise in lone wolf terrorism, experts say after Bondi shooting. On December 14th, two gunmen opened fire at a first night Hanukkah celebration on Bondi Beach in Sydney, Australia, killing 15 and injuring more than 40. Investigators say Islamic State propaganda inspired the attack, and police found two homemade IS flags matching IS instructions in the gunman's car. Terrorism experts warned lone wolf attack methods require little funding, target vulnerable open-air crowds, and could fuel more extremist plots as holiday gatherings and European Christmas markets approach. Authorities announced charges against the surviving suspect, including murder and terrorism offences, while Benjamin Netanyahu, Israeli Prime Minister, rebuked Anthony Albanese, Australian Prime Minister, who rejected the claims as baseless and dangerous. Media outlets and commentators warned that linking the attack to globalize the Intifada politicized the massacre amid rising anti-Semitic attacks since October 7, 2023, complicating Jewish and pro-Palestine public debates. I've already said enough about what happened at Bondi Beach at the time on the other podcasts, and I do send condolences to the friends and family of the people who were at Bondi Beach whose lives were lost because of the shooting. No matter what happens, no matter what happens at events like this, or such moments in our lives that cost someone's life, moment attacks like that should never happen on anyone. Even if you disagree with these people's lifestyle choices, their beliefs, viewpoints, and how they even see the world, we do not stoop to the level of our worst enemies. I have no other words to describe the devastation of the Bondi shooting. Look, even if it was some other people groups that were at the beach at the time, I would still say that's not okay. You can't go shooting people and unaliving them. And yeah, it's just there's just so much going on with that. It's so unfortunate. At some point, even I had thoughts about if I was even there, how frightening that could have been for anyone I know who would have also been there. You can have your disagreements. You don't have to like people, but killing them is not the answer. It never was the answer, and it never will be either. And what's worse is that if there are certain groups, if there are certain people, regardless of their identity, it doesn't even matter what people identify as these days, whether it be by heritage or even their own preferential choices. If someone sees shootings like that, and for some reason they want to, for some reason, and I'm saying this as a hypothetical. I do not ask this to happen whatsoever. For some reason, if there was someone that have some kind of grudge or have a strong hate for someone, a particular individual to start off with, that that shooting at Bondi Beach could be the beginning, at least to people in Australia that have been that's experiencing or start for the first time hearing about such events of mass shootings happening in their own country. America had a head start with this, like more than a decade ago, and I'd say the same thing with the Sandy Hook's shooting. Once one mass shooting that cost the lives of people on that day is only the beginning of the worst, of more, potentially even worse mass shooting attempts that we are yet to see. You think that's it? People think that we're going to just ramp up security, to station police officers in public spaces. It's not that easy. You can't just encourage people to become police officers and station them in every public place. What's the root cause of these events? Why do these events happen to begin with? Not many people asking these questions. And this goes for anything. Like, you need to find the root cause of why prices in our communities are so high. Why why is travel abroad so limited? If you're going to if you're going to prevent horrible events from happening, you can't just put up extra safety guardrails to soft to soften impacts of the next future incidences. You got to tackle the root cause, and by tackling the root cause of these terrible events, you at least solve 40% of the problems. It's not enough. So sad. Interstellar comet makes closest approach to Earth. On Friday, comet I/Atlas will pass closest to Earth at 167 million miles, marking the third interstellar discovery by the Atlas Telescope Asteroid Terrestrial Impact Last-Alert System. Because it formed outside our galaxy, comet/Atlas is a rare interstellar visitor that the astronomy community has tracked since its initial discovery over the summer. Multi-wavelength data from missions, including European Space Agency's XMM Newton, showed Japan's X-ray imaging and spectroscopy mission XRISM detected X-rays fanning out 248,000 miles and signatures of carbon, oxygen, and nitrogen. Officials emphasized the comet is 100% not posing a threat and will remain distant. Skywatchers are advised to view it an hour or two before sunrise with an 8-inch telescope, while the Virtual Telescope project will livestream it at 4 a.m. UTC on Friday. Kohler warned that unlike comets, this object will not return to our solar system, and previous interstellar comets from 2017 and 2019 produced no X-rays, so more X-ray and multi-wavelength observing missions are needed. Okay? If you need more X-rays, get some more X-rays then. Just do it. If it's so desperately needed, then do it. I know there's going to be a handful of people across social media that say we can't go out of space. There's a thing called the firmament. We can't go beyond that. There's no such thing as space. We can't go to planets. There's no way of going out of space. And I can't argue with that. There's no arguing that even if, with thousands of years of space exploration and moments of Neil Armstrong landing on the moon, how can people be sure of that if they themselves weren't even there to experience it? And again, the same set of people that argue about space not being real, we can't go beyond the firmament, even saying that going to the International Space Station is all just a setup to give people the illusion that we can go out of space. Again, I'm not saying it's true, and I'm not saying it's false either. Yeah, the last few years I have seen lots of videos about things that seem out of place, like why is there a mouse running along the rocket thrusts? If if there's no gravity in space, how is it that water in a plastic cup is still firmly within the cup and not floating all over the place? Why even allow liquids in outer space to begin with if there is no gravity to ground any solids or fluids? These are questions that a lot of people will be asking about space in general. Again, I'm not going to argue with them. They are asking good questions about space, but until there is a response from experts regarding those questions, I have my own thoughts and sometimes doubts about if we could even go to outer space. But we'll just have to wait to find out to see if more information about that does come out and other information does become clearer. French court rejects Shein website ban over childlike sex dolls. Good grief. What the fudge, man? A Paris court rejected the French government's request to suspend online retail Shein, ruling that suspending the platform would be disproportionate as the offending products had been removed. The court acknowledged serious harm to public order by Shein, but stated that the sale of illicit products was sporadic, ordering Shein to implement age verification before resuming sales of sexual products that could constitute pornographic content. Shein, founded in China in 2012 and now based in Singapore, maintains a large portion of its manufacturing and production in China and has faced criticism from French retail federations over unfair competition and product safety concerns. Now, no matter what people think of the French, even if most of them are mostly negative, people really despise the French. No, I'm with the French on this one. Not for the sake of competition and prioritizing French-based stores and businesses. This is also a concern that also regards Shein itself. Not just the fact that Shein is a big retailer, but the scale it goes beyond its own country of origin, which is China. And even Singapore, where Shein headquarters are currently based in. I don't blame French retail federations for raising concerns about competition and how much of a market share that Shein will have in France with French consumers. I think the same should be said with other countries' retail business industry. Whilst you should allow other companies to provide their products to consumers in their respective countries, there has to be some kind of limit. Not too strict, but at least a rough ceiling that countries are not allowed to go over, just so that there are plenty of options for people to buy products to their liking or needs. And especially the children's sex dolls. No, absolutely not. That should not have happened. That should not be a thing whatsoever. Why? Why are Shein selling sex toys, especially childlike? That no, I'm sorry. I cannot stress enough how terrible of an idea that would be. Now, this is not going to stop people from buying such products, but still, selling such products like that in physical stores, likely to be in view of children. If anyone is going to physical Shein stores with their children, that is concerning. Very, very concerning. Good grief. Absolutely not. No. Toronto Quebec City high-speed rail could see dozens of daily trains. On December 19th, 2025, the Canadian press reported Alto's drafts estimate 72 daily trains on the 1,000-kilometer Quebec City-Toronto corridor by 2039, cutting Montreal-Toronto travel to about 3 hours. Alto, in 2023, began considering a shift from high frequency to high speed after concerns about public support and pressure from Quebec provincial and municipal politicians. Based on technical assumptions, Alto's 2023 study compared VIA rail, high frequency and high speed options, estimating costs at $60 billion to $90 billion, with trains running up to 300 kilometers per hour. Transport Minister Stephen McKinnon announced last week the Montreal-Ottawa first construction segment will start in 2029, but federal government funding approval for the full line remains pending. A Prime Minister's office briefing forecasts 26.5 million annual trips by 2059 for high speed compared to 6.4 million under existing VIA services. Now, Canada loves the public transit. I mean, it's not going to make things considerably better for Canada, but for local residents living in major Canadian cities in the east part of the region, it just makes sense. Again, giving people options of getting around. The more options of where to buy, where to go, the better. Absolutely. Now, of course, it's going to be a while before that is to be completed, because there is so many. I believe in Canada there has to be a strong enough public approval in local communities where these communities will be impacted by the existence and presence of these rail projects and using such services to get around in Canada. Whilst things are looking up for Canada's public transit systems, it is still a very, very long way to go to ensure that construction not just continues, but once it is completed, it operates as it should be. And Canadians that use the service for whatever the reason that might be, it is fulfilled. People can get from place to place, either for work, visiting family, or maybe on a one-off trip, exploring the cities that Canada has to offer. That's all that matters. That's why a project like this exists to begin with, to provide connectivity and provide other economical benefits that not a lot of people will notice at first, but slowly over time, it makes a big difference. And not a lot of people talk about that enough. Not just because it's not noticeable, it's also because people are more invested in other things. It'll do just as well, it's just, but what about this thing? It'll do just as much wonders, if not more. And yeah, it's just a hypothetical. On Thursday, the Constanta Court of Appeal sentenced American rapper Wiz Khalifa to 9 months in jail, and the ruling is final under Romanian law. During a July 2024 performance, Khalifa reportedly smoked on stage at the Beach Please festival in Constanta County, and police later found more than 18 grams of cannabis in his possession. A lower court initially imposed a fine of about 3,600 Romanian lei, but prosecutors from Decourt appealed, and the Constanta Court of Appeal reversed the fine, ruling a, a custodial sentence was warranted under Romanian law. It remains unclear whether Romanian authorities will seek extradition, and Khalifa's legal team is appealing the sentence, while Mr. Zaha said it is highly unlikely he will serve prison in Constanta. Under Romanian law, cannabis is classified as a dangerous drug, and possession remains criminal, contrasting with decriminalization moves in Germany, Spain, Portugal, the Netherlands, and parts of the United States. So, there's a sentence given to Wiz Khalifa for 9 months in drug possession, with the Constanta Court of Appeal reversing the fine. Yet we heard so much drama about Tate brothers putting them under house arrest that goes on for who knows how long, and they still are to this day. And we haven't heard much from that ever since. Now, I'm not trying to make a point. This is just me. I don't know much about Romanian law and the DIICOT and other laws in Romania. I'm sure hearing a lot of stories about celebrities doing something in Romania and then having DICOT getting involved, being given fines, sentences, and whatnot. Yeah, there's so much that goes on in Romania. Not that it's bad, but you do hear a lot of stuff go on in Romania. However, that's just me. Nonetheless, where do I go from here? Now, I'm not saying that drugs are good, but I'm certainly not. But of course, I'm certainly not saying that all drugs are bad either. It just depends how much of it you take, and also, actually, it goes either way with drugs, but it depends on what kind of drug it is and how much of that drug you take. Because whilst it does get a kick out of you at first, it doesn't end well if you take more than you should, or more than that is legally and physically allowed, and selling such drugs is also another thing that's also just as concerning regarding to the law in particular countries. There are drugs that are valuable in other countries, and such people can make quite a lot of bank from that. However, just because you can make money out of something does not mean you should do it. If you're going to start something, you got to be smart about it, and at least follow in a particular framework that doesn't draw attention to yourself in a negative way, and it certainly does not get you into trouble with local and national authorities. That I will say on regards to Wiz Khalifa fine for drug possession. He just had the drug on him. He wasn't actually using it. He just had the drug on him, and he's got arrested for that particular reason. That's how serious countries like Romania take drugs, like in general. You know, it's not even just taking it; it's just having it on you. So yeah, and that is it for the episode.